In this lesson, we're going to be using Super Goal Book 5. The lesson that you're about to encounter is going to be an active student-centered learning, and all the tasks are designed that in a way that they can be used in a classroom or they can be used remotely. This version is for the teacher. We will make available the PowerPoint without the voiceover and the explanation for you to use with your students. This is Unit 1, Lesson 1. Lesson 1 means the first period. Now, at the beginning of the year, because the students are still new, so what we design for 45 minutes might take more than 45 minutes because the students are still getting used to some of the tools. We will talk more about how to prepare the students for using the tools and future lessons and broadcasts. So this is Super Goal 5. These are the first 2 pages. The most important question that we always want to ask is, what are we going to learn and be able to do in this 45-minute period? So the first one is listening. In this lesson, the students, that is the we, can hear a sentence made up of 3 to 5 details and tell if the sentence is a fact. In speaking, the students will be able to produce orally a sentence made up of 3 to 5 details that expresses a fact. And in writing, it is almost like the speaking, but the difference is that it will be in writing. Now, these I can statements are generic. They change from one page to another or from one book to another in the content. So the focus in the sentences are the frequency words for actions, like regularly, frequently, normally, hardly ever, never, sometimes, seldom, often, always, and rarely. Let's start. The most important thing at the beginning of every lesson is the 4 principles, and I can never get enough of saying that. The 4 principles are that the students need to switch their language from the native language Arabic into English. The second principle is that they need to know where this lesson is going. The third principle is that their attention should be heightened. And the fourth principle is that all the students in the classroom are able to do it. Now, the last one, all the students are able to do it, changes with the level of the task, with the grade, with the motivation of the students. So let's just say for now that most of the students can do it. And if the students are able to do anything at all, that in itself is a motivator. So let's start with the first one. You are going to tell the students to write 2 action words, the verbs, and 2 words for things you see in the picture. Now, what you can do, you can put all 3 and give them a sheet of paper. They need to number their paper 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So let's look at the first picture. Let's go for action words. Remember, you are not doing it as a whole class. You are doing it as individuals. Each student is working alone. Not all the students need to write the same words. But as an example, we can have climb, we can have run, we can have jog. You might even use the word listen. You might use the word all. So if you have 30 students in your classroom, a lot of them might write the same verbs, but some people might write something different. That's okay. Now, 2 words for things you see in the picture. All right, you see a man, you see a helmet, you see rocks, you see a cliff, you see a backpack, you see a jogging machine, you see a t-shirt, you see a window. So when we ask the students to do this, we are not looking for the right answer. What we are looking for is code switching to force the mind to move from the native language to the target language, which is English. And not all the students have to write the same thing. So you give them around 5 to 7 minutes. You're going around the classroom. You might help some students by pointing. For example, salad, you see it, you eat it, whatever, okay? It doesn't matter whether the verbs and the words are correct. What is important is that the student is bringing something out in order to code switch. Number two, by looking at the picture to think of words such as actions or words for things you see, they are looking at the picture more closely. When they finish, you're going to ask them to continue. So now you're going to say, all right, you have written words. We're not going to check your words. What we want you to do is to listen to the text that I'm going to read you for each passage. I want you to listen to, oh, there we've got a double here, right? So you're going to ask them to listen or find more action words and item words in the text that they're listening to and to write them on their list. It goes something like this, okay? So now listen to the text that I'm going to read you for pictures in the one box. Arthur is really into fitness. He works out at the gym regularly. He runs frequently and he plays tennis twice a weekend. From time to time, Arthur goes rock climbing. So the words that you listen to here, they might write a lot of words, they might just write a few, but here are some more action words. Works out. Another word for the items are gym. Runs is an action word. Plays is an action word. Tennis is an item. Maybe we cannot see tennis in the picture, so that's okay. But rock climbing. So you read each one to them like I read. So let's try number two, okay? Are you ready? Okay, I'm going to read number two. I'd like you to listen for action words and items and write them on your paper. Rifa is a health food fanatic. She normally eats vegetarian meals. She hardly ever eats meat. She never drinks coffee, but she loves herbal tea. Sometimes she drinks 6 cups a day. So again, don't waste too much time. If they wrote some words, fine. If they didn't write any words, fine. But what you have done through the listening, and they're attempting to write action words and item words, you are forcing the changing from the first language into the target language, which we call code switching. And if you hear the words, you're just expanding your vocabulary. And by listening to these texts, you know where you're going. So I'm not going to spend too much time to do 3, 4, 5, 6. You can do that yourselves. Now, the brown is always the opening task. Now we're going to go to the first learning task, which is about 3 to 5 minutes. One of the most important things in any situation where you want to learn and develop a concept is to actually roll up your sleeves and dig into the detail. We need to stop as teachers giving everything. So look at how this will work. There are 6 texts here, and we're going to tell the students, find these words in the 6 texts. When you find them, circle them and write the number next to each. So you're looking for the word regularly. When you find it, you circle regularly and you write the number. Let's see how this is done. So these are the 6 texts. And then you found one of the sentences, like he spends most of his free time, it's most of his free time playing video games. So you write number 9 next to it. What is happening here? In order for the student to find these words, they have to look in the text, right? They might not comprehend everything, but they can find it and everybody can. So what we're doing is that we're getting more exposure to English in print. Second, by trying to find this word, we are heightening the attention of each one. You cannot find it if your attention is not on it. It's not a glimpse. You got to really look at it, which heightens your attention. So after you have circled these and put the number next to them, let's move. So this should take 3 to 5 minutes, all right? Let's go to the second learning task. Now that you found them, underline the action word, which is the verb, that each of these words talks about. So he spends most of his free time playing video games. All right. So the action word in the sentence that the circled word or words are talking about, it would look something like this. So most of his free time, yeah, he spends it. So here's what we want you to do is to go back to all these that you found, and then now you underline the action word or the verb in each of them like this. Okay? Again, 3 to 5 minutes should do it. So these are the words that you are looking for. When you have found them, find the action word that this one is usually talking about. And when you finish, let's check our answers. For example, we circled regularly, and the action word is he works out or works out. We circled frequently, the action is runs. Twice a week, plays. From time to time, goes rock climbing. Normally eats, hardly ever eats, never drinks. So you are giving them feedback now instead of going to every student to ask them to talk. What we want to do is say, here are the answers. Check your own answer. So what happens when you ask one student to give feedback? That student would look at only that one answer. And most of the other students are not going to look at it because it's not theirs. But if we say, well, you have done this, now look at the screen, see if you have done them correctly. See if there are any differences between what you've done and what you haven't done. Remember, this is a feedback, but you can still ask one or two, just to get some action going in the classroom. That doesn't mean you should not ask a few students to give answers. Now, what are you doing when you put this on the screen? You are going around the classroom to ensure that every person is checking their book to see if they underline and circle the right ones, okay? So this is the feedback part. Now let's go to more learning. Learning task number 3. So what do we have here? He spends most of his free time playing video games. This is where the teacher comes in to do some visible learning. If the blue line is your free time or his free time, so this is my free time. How do we explain most of his free time? So if from here to here is the free time, from here to here is most of the free time. It is not going to be a full concept right now, but more explanations are coming. So most of his free time talks about time. This is very important. As you notice, some of the words that we saw before have different roles. And here we're going to focus that which one is talking about time. Let's try another one. He plays tennis twice a week. If we have 7 days in a week, and he plays on day 2 and day 5, it can be on day 1 and day 7, it doesn't matter. That is twice a week, right? So we're still talking about time. We need to differentiate that some of these words are talking about time. Now, let's go to the next one. He rarely takes a vacation. Rarely is not a time. So let's have a look. Let's suppose this is the duration of time, year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4. And he took one vacation in 4 years, just one vacation in 4 years. One vacation in 4 years, we would say rarely takes a vacation. This is not time. Rarely is talking about the repetition of take a vacation. Take a vacation is repeated rarely. Now, one time a year, one time in 4 years, the words are going to be relevant. And that's why we need to develop a concept, not a structure. Let's try another one. We just changed one word. He always takes a vacation. He always takes a vacation. If these are the same 4 years, and he took a vacation 3 times every year, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So 3 vacations every year is always. But it's a relative always. It doesn't mean it takes up all your time, but every time you have an opportunity, you take it. So we would say, always talks about the repetition of the vacation. From rarely, which is maybe once in a blue moon or once every 4 years, to always, like 3 times a year. So all of these words, and I don't want to use any grammatical terms at the moment, okay? We can learn the grammatical terms at some point. I'm not saying don't teach them, but don't waste the time giving it a name. Try to use up the time to give it a meaning and a concept. So now we have 2 types of words. We have the words that talk about the time, and we have the words that talks about the repetition of the action. Now we come to another visual. We told the students that the red words are time. The black words are frequency or repetition. Write the other words on the frequency line. This is your frequency line. Write the words, not the numbers. Please don't let them write the numbers. Why? I know it's faster, but this is a learning task. It's not a test. In a learning test, if you don't write the word, you won't remember the word. If you write the number, the last thing on your mind is the number, not the word. So if you write, let's say 7, never, we write 7. Are you thinking of never or are you thinking of 7? No, write the word never, just like I did here. So on the timeline or on the frequency line, we've got never, which is from here, to always, which is from here. So let's take the black ones and ask the students to put them in order. Now, for the time being, don't ask them to give any right answers. This is part of the learning process. At some point, mistakes help you learn. Whereas the traditional learning where we need to ask the students questions so that they can have the right answers, that is not learning. That means you already know the answer, okay? So here's what we want to do. Give them 3 to 5 minutes to, so never is at the beginning, like no, never, nothing at all, to always. Where do the other words go? Remember, write the words, not the numbers, okay? When they finish, don't give a feedback on this one. Say, I want to check your learning. I'm going to give you some time phrases. Some time phrases may take more than 1 word. Write the frequency word for each time phrase, like this. These are the frequency words. These are the time phrases. So 2 times a week for the whole year. Which one would it be? Don't give an answer right now. Let the kids do it, okay? So here are the sentences. 2 times a week for the whole year. Now remember, some of these might take more than one because these words are relative to time and relative to many other things. So sometimes more than one can work here. We will give you the feedback. So this is what you're telling the students. 2 times a week for the whole year. Maybe one time every 2 years when I'm not busy. Every chance I get at 2 o'clock, almost every day, all the time, not at all. All these words are easy and should have been learned. Now, okay, there might be one, two, or some students who don't remember any of these. We are not going to try to solve the English language learning problem for every student, in every school, in every district, in every grade level. This is not the purpose of this. This is the purpose of saying, let's start thinking about learning as an experience. Okay? Now, when they finish, tell them, okay, like you did before, I want you to check your answers, okay? And you, as the teacher, you're walking around now. So you put them up again, 2 times a week for the whole year. Remember, get them to write the words, not put the numbers. I just put the numbers so we can make it easier for you to check. All right? Maybe one time every 2, 3 years, we can say hardly ever, or seldom, or rarely. Okay? When I'm not busy, sometimes. Every chance I get, frequently, often, at 2 o'clock, almost every day, normally, and all the time, always, not at all, never. Okay? So now let's go back to some more learning. For those of you who have watched some of the previous lessons, we call this incremental learning, where we don't keep helping the students for 20 minutes to learn something and then find out. Every time we do 5 to 10 minutes, we do something for them to check their learning, and then we move on. This is called incremental. You will see it in some of the other lessons. Now let's go back. The most important part of the lesson, and this is the one that is a tool that they got to learn, because they're probably not used to it. It's the language interaction part. Learning happens best when two people are interacting. And interacting does not mean read off the pages of the book. Interact means I will say something or do something that will make you do something, not just follow a sequence. So here are the instructions. In pairs, one of you say a sentence using the words from the screen. The other, please reply. If you do the same with the same frequency, end your sentence with to. If you do the same but with different frequency, start with O. Switch when you finish. Okay, I'm sure nobody's going to know how to do it. That's why I said, see the tool on the next slide. All right. So let's not forget that the screen will contain something like this, the action words and the frequency words, okay? Now let's go to the tool and see how this works. Student A is going to say, I sometimes go rock climbing. Now, this person can say, I do the same thing. This person can say, I never do the same thing. And this person can say, well, I do the same thing, but not as often, okay? Let's find out. I sometimes go rock climbing too. Oh, so it's the same. You go, yeah, I sometimes go rock climbing too. So this is same. Let's go to the tool and check it out again. I didn't put all the words here because I wanted it to be visible to you. So let's put the verbs and the frequency words are here. The students are sitting in pairs as in student A and B. Now, please note that preferably the books are closed because we don't want the students to read off the books. But if you want them to peek into the books to get, some reminders of the words, that's fine. Now, student A will say a sentence using an action and a frequency from the screen to the student. This is going to be happening in pairs. Student B will have three possibilities. It will be the same, and she will say 2. It will be a different frequency, or it will be a never, and they must always speak in a low voice to each other. This is the pair voice. You need to insist on that. Because if the voice is not pair, as the voice of the students go up higher, the other students' voices will go up higher, which will give the teacher a headache, which will seem chaotic in the classroom, and not much learning will be happening. Let's have a look again and see how it works. Remember, you don't know what student A is going to say. They can choose anything at any random. So let's look at student A. We just put 4 groups here, but in a classroom, you would probably have up to 15 groups. That's why they need to learn the tool first. So she said, I sometimes go rock climbing. This one said, I play basketball regularly. This one said, I often run in the park. And this one said, I always buy something when I go to the mall. Now, let's look at the answer of this one. We said, I sometimes go rock climbing too. So it's an agreement. Oh, I never play basketball. It's like, you play regularly, I never play. But this one, I often run in the park. This one is not agreeing or disagreeing, but she's giving a different frequency. I sometimes run. Or you can say, I sometimes run in the park. Okay. This one says, I always buy something when I go to the mall. Oh, I rarely buy anything when I go to the mall. So these two are saying, yes, we do that, but not with the same frequency. This one is saying quite the opposite. This one is agreeing. So what we want to do is to put all the actions here and all the frequency words here and let them do each at least 4, and they can change their answers. Remember, this is a tool. Now, once you learn this tool, we're going to reuse the tool in future lessons. That's why the first lesson, as I told you, it's much better to learn tools first and then go to the lesson. I hope that this was very clear. Now, this is what we put on for the students, and I repeated the instruction. You don't have to put them in this order. You can change the order if you want, or you can put a student A with just the frequencies that the student A does, and then change the screen when you want them to switch so that student B speaks first, okay? Now, once this is learned, all right, and notice I gave it 6 to 10 minutes. It might probably take longer the first time because they're still learning the tool, all right? Now, the final task. They can do this in the classroom, or you can assign it as a homework or assignment. Remember, the assessment has to be designed in such a way that it can be reused in your test, in your quiz, in your exam, exactly with the same format, with the same instructions. You just change the words, these words. So what you want them to do is to rewrite each sentence using a frequency word. I play tennis 1 or 2 times a year. Do you see why we were learning the time phrases? Because we will remove the time phrase and replace it with a frequency word to talk about the action. So, can you do this in the test exactly as is, but put new sentences? You can even use new words from future lessons or previous lessons. This is going to help the student enormously because the student goes, I know what you're going to give me. I know you're going to give me this. I don't know what sentences you're going to write. That's all. This is what we mean by an assessment task tool. All right? So let's look at them. I buy something every time I go to the mall. I check my phone 10 times an hour for text messages. I don't go rock climbing at all. I spend most of my free time watching YouTube documentaries. If you're going to do it in the class, and I really, encourage you to do at least one or two in the classroom so that the students can learn how to do this before they go home. Helping them write the answers is not learning. And unfortunately, many students believe that if I get somebody to write the answers for me and I get a good grade, that's what it's all about. Unfortunately, that is not education. And whether you finish in the same period, whether you split this lesson into two periods, you can always remember, give them check your answer feedback. So I play tennis one or two times a year. 1 or 2 times a year is the same as rarely. I rarely play tennis. Do you see now how we are leading to rephrasing? How you can actually learn how to rephrase? Okay. So how are we rephrasing? We are rephrasing from a time phrase to a frequency word for the action. I buy something every time I go to the mall. I always buy something when I go to the mall. I check my phone 10 times an hour for text messages, and you know who you are. I often check my phone for text messages. It's not always, because if you go like always, that means you do nothing else, right? I don't go rock climbing at all. I never go rock climbing. I spend most of my free time watching YouTube documentaries. I frequently watch YouTube documentaries. Now, remember, frequently, often, always, sorry, rarely, you might use other words and they would still be correct. I hope that you enjoyed this and thank you for watching. Go to the YouTube channel to watch all the other lessons. I'm going to be putting up a different lesson for each of the units, for each of the books, as fast as I can. These take time. If I'm just writing them without the voiceover, without the graphics, and without the layout, it would be much faster. But I think at least for the first units that this would be helpful to a lot of teachers. So subscribe to the YouTube channel so that you can get updates about the new lessons that I'm putting up. And if you need to contact me, here are my contact details. Thank you very much until we meet together again with the new lesson.